Welcome back to the Coaching Collective podcast. We are blessed to have the wonderful Kristen Ellis here, which we're both, me and Maddie, major fangirling about. So if you can just give us a little bit of an introduction and a rough timeline, sort of working through your personal health, fitness, competitive journey.
Of course. Thank you for having me. So my name is Kristen Ellis, and I have been inconsistently in and out of the gym like since school. Really, I was training a little bit throughout school actually to keep fit for motocross. I was racing motocross when I was younger.
Oh,
So that was my thing. And then after school, I got heavily involved in partying. So obviously, gym was the first to go. And it wasn't until I was about to turn 21, I wanted to get that revenge body. I wanted to feel good in my skin. And then COVID was actually what kind of stopped me from drinking. Well, I was like, well, I'm not going to drink at home. And then, yeah, very slowly just started getting more and more consistent. So when was that? That was a while ago now. And now I'm 26 and I'm like obsessed with the gym, love bodybuilding and everything. So just gradually over time, working in the environment and stuff, it just got me really consistent. So
beautiful. You're the first ever female that I've heard about like racing motocross, because my brothers raced motocross like all through our childhood whilst like I
yeah.
rode horses. And I completely understand the like needing to get into fitness for all that.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So prior to your, how many seasons have you done? Two?
Two now. Yeah.
Yeah, and you started in the IFBB, didn't you?
Yes, I was going to do ICN first, and then I just went with IFBB. So
Yeah. Was there like any specific reasoning behind that? Like was it you just wanted to like compete in the federation that you intended to compete on, or did it sort of just like happen?
I think I saw an ICN show not long before I was going to start prep. And I think for me, I didn't like the posing and stuff as much. I think I just felt a lot more aligned to IFBB. And of course, like ICN and everything is a great stepping stone, but I just felt so drawn to IFBB because their conditioning's crazy insane and you can just take it a little bit further. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go balls in and just send it really. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I feel like most people look at like the natural federations as like stepping stones, but I
Mm.
think it is true that when you do move into the IFBB opportunity wise, and especially like if competing is something that you are really, really serious about, like regardless of whether or not you are natural, whether or not you retain that status, I feel like just the international opportunities as well, because there are so many more. I feel like
Mm.
sort of, even when I competed in ICN, the whole time all I thought about was I've just got to get through this and like get to the IFBB. Like this is just
Yeah.
like the first step. But yeah, did you find it daunting at all jumping straight into the IFBB, or you were just like fine?
Mm. Yeah, I was not ready my first prep. Like, I literally was so nervous. It felt like I had Tourette's in my face or something. Like, my face was like uncontrollably shaking. Like, I don't know if that happened to you girls as well, but it was like I was smiling and my lips were like shaking everywhere and I was like hot and sweaty. Yeah. And it was like I went blind. Like, I was just so nervous. I like lost vision. So, yeah, definitely the first time I was so nervous, but like I think deep down I knew I was underprepared. I didn't practice my posing nowhere near as much or anything like that. So yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking.
Did you find your second season knowing that like maybe criteria wise you aligned a little bit better, that like it was less intimidating, or how would you like compare that from both preps?
Yeah, I'd say I had nerves in different ways for
Yeah.
different reasons. Like the first time was just because I was underprepared, I wasn't ready, I knew I wasn't conditioned, and my posing was terrible. But the second time, the nerves were more because of pressure because I looked way better, my posing was way better. So then I had the external pressure of people knowing I was going to do well, and it was like the thought, if I don't do well, I'm going to let these people down. But I felt like once I got to nationals, I was a lot less nervous because it was less people I knew in the crowd. So it was, I don't know, it was different. It was different kind of nerves. Still very nervous, not
Yeah.
as nervous though.
And I remember, this is gonna sound like the most fangirl thing ever, but like in your YouTube videos, you mentioned how Was it your first show your feedback was in regards to posing being like a little bit too slow or something like that?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then your second show you just like chilled out a little bit more and then you ended up like getting the posing award or something along those.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first show, I was a little bit disappointed I didn't get it because I'd worked so hard to improve on my posing. But yeah, when came to the comparisons, I wasn't hitting them as quick as the other girls because I'd practiced very, very slow. Because my first ever season, I was too fast. And then I was too slow. And then nationals, I was like, you know what? I don't give a fuck about posing anymore. Whatever. Like, doesn't matter. I'm just going to speed it up. And like, I felt like I was sloppy and I wasn't hitting my poses as well because it was so rushed. And then I ended up getting the award, and I was like, oh, maybe I should take the pressure off next time then.
Because I remember watching like a reel you posted of your walk and then thinking like she got feedback that she was like too slow, but I swear I watched it and I was like, this is flawless. But it makes a little bit more sense now that you mentioned like the comparisons, like if they are
Yeah.
flipping you around so quickly and
Yeah.
like you really say hold the pose for half a second, I feel
Yeah.
like yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, beautiful. In regards to, I can't remember whether or not we touched on this, like when you were explaining your like journey, what was the driving force behind starting bodybuilding?
So initially, it was actually watching my partner compete. So I used to be quite against bodybuilding. I never thought it was something I would ever do. And it's kind of how I was raised as well. I was raised in a family where, they believe in that stigma that bodybuilding is very bad for you, which to some extent it can be. So yeah, I always had this biased kind of outlook on it. And then it was when I saw my partner compete and I watched the show, I watched the girls and everything, and I was just mesmerized. Like I was speechless by just how much fun it looked and everything like that. And it was so inspiring because obviously I'd seen him struggle his whole prep. And then watching him win, I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
So that was initially what got me into like wanting to compete initially. And then, yeah, once I had transitioned from first prep to second, just that initial like self improvement, I'm like, I never want to stop doing this. Like, the journey is amazing. So,
Yeah. Beautiful. Do you find that there are characteristics or just like things that carry across from your motocross that sort of influenced like the bodybuilding in regards to like extreme sports or like resilience
mm,
or anything like that?
yeah, I'd say so. It's funny you say that as well because I have actually noticed a lot of motocross riders, they transition into bodybuilding. And I think it comes from not that selfish mindset, but it's not a team sport at the end of the day. You got to be really in it for yourself. And yeah, I feel like you do need to be some level of fucked up to want to be a bodybuilder. And I guess it's kind of the same as motocross as well. Like you've just got that, adrenaline junkie vibe. And
Yeah.
yeah, just like kind of that selfish type of drive to compete against yourself at the end of the day. So
Yeah, that makes
yeah,
a lot of sense.
Kind of
yeah, for sure.
in that vein of like bodybuilding sort of being like a selfish sport.
Yeah.
Have you been able to find like a sense of community with other bodybuilders and whatnot?
Yeah, I find that in bodybuilding, like it's a great community and you meet so many like-minded people. And like, I'm a big believer on energy and all those things. And if you vibe with people, it's just amazing. But you definitely got to be selective with who you surround yourself with as well. Like I do find, you'll get those people who just want to beat everyone and stuff, but majority of the community, everyone's just happy for everyone's wins because they know it's you versus you. It's not you versus the other competitors. So yeah.
That is so true. How do you find backstage? Like, is there any differences between like the state and national shows or like specific states, or is it pretty much like the same in regards to like, backstage experience?
There definitely is a difference between states and nationals. States, a lot of people are like more quiet, keep to themselves, and like it's not as much of a vibe, I guess. And I think it's just because everyone's really nervous. Whereas when you get to nationals, all of the nerves are gone and everyone kind of knows where they stand in the sport.
Yeah.
And it's like you're excited to see your interstate besties and everything. So I always find I have a lot more fun backstage at nationals than I do states, simply because the nerves have just worn off. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
What are the biggest lessons you've learned with each of your individual preps, and how do they sort of like differentiate in regards to like the first one that you did and then your second prep?
Yeah, I'd say I definitely took different lessons from each prep. So my first prep definitely was, you know, the fact that off season is important. Like at the end of the day, it's not really off season. It's kind of like prep before the prep. It's in a way. So that was a huge thing for me because my first ever off season, I didn't really take serious. It was like Friday to Sunday, I was just eating shit food the whole time. And definitely posing practice, like it's never too early to practice that. And that was something I took away from my first prep as well. And just in general, like just having that self-confidence and working on your mental health to understand you can't control the outcome and you just have to accept yourself for who you are and all those kinds of things, like because prep's a huge mental thing, and if you don't have that in control, it'll just eat away at you in your prep. So that's kind of what I took away from my first prep. But then my second prep, it was more, I just learned things about myself rather than the prep. Like I learned more about my body, different methods of dieting, and just how passionate I am about the sport. So I'd say I took a lot more from my first prep in terms of learning from mistakes. And the second prep, I just learned more about myself.
Yeah. Did you have any doubts whatsoever in regards to like after your first prep? Because I've had people message me before in regards to either like feedback they've received or maybe not like reversing as well as they thought they would or something along those lines, and then feeling as though like they weren't sort of meant to bodybuild, and then like sort of discrediting themselves and sort of their ability to be successful in the future, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I'd say after my first prep, I definitely doubted that I had the potential to place, simply because I don't even think I made the top 5 in my first prep. So I definitely did have a lot of self-doubt in terms of that. But I didn't think I wasn't meant to bodybuild. Like I was willing to do whatever it took. But you know, at the end of the day, that comes down to who you are as a person. And as a bodybuilder, you should be very open to constructive criticism, because that's what we get at the end of the day. We're getting judged by a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's the same as what I was referring to. Like you really got to work on your mental health and your mindset throughout prep, because that's, you know, that's exactly what it is. So
yeah. I actually had a similar conversation with somebody who I had on the podcast yesterday, and talking about like viewing prepping and competing as like it's never a year, it's never a 2-year thing, it's like across decades, and the first like couple of your competitions are like literally stepping stones that like everybody sort of has to undergo. And I feel like I know my partner who has a couple of clients who are like first timers, but they're so eager and they get a little bit disheartened at the thought of like not placing or not winning their first competitions. But I think especially if you're like just starting and it is like your first or your second comp, it is so essential to understand that like those who are winning, or majority of those who are winning pro cards, are people who have done like numerous seasons, whatnot, aside from last bikini season in last season B. Like, most of the time it is something that is like years and years of practice and like pursuing sort of the same goal. And I feel like that's something I learned myself as well. Like going into my first IFBB competition, it's not that I have like doubts in myself. It's more so being realistic and understanding that it isn't a 1-year thing. Like this is, I'm right at the start of my journey. Like this is literally only the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like it's honestly such a patient sport, and it's a lifestyle. Like it's not just a 12-week challenge or whatever. And unfortunately in this society, because of social media and stuff, we're programmed to be impatient beings. Like we get things so quickly, like Netflix or Uber Eats or something like that. So we're programmed to feel like everything can be instant, but bodybuilding is such a delayed gratification type of process. Like it's like it can be frustrating, but if you're going to be impatient, you're in it for the wrong reasons as well.
And I feel like there's something so satisfying, like if you are in it for the right reasons, like there's something so satisfying about how long it sort of takes, because I feel like it makes it so worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like say getting into good condition and reflecting back on how long it took and the effort that it took and whatnot. I feel like it just makes everything feel so much better. Not to mention, I feel like people who enjoy bodybuilding are always people who obviously enjoy the journey. Like they love the monotony of it. They love the grind and whatnot. And I feel like for me personally, anyways, the biggest thing that I get out of like a whole entire prep is like the self-belief element of having like all of these boxes to tick and thinking like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And then by the end of the night, like they're all done. And I go to bed
Yeah.
thinking, fuck, like I didn't realize like how much I was really like capable of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is such a long-term thing. But yeah, it's so gratifying, I find.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's just so much more bittersweet when you put in that work over a long time. Because like imagine if you just got a medal straight away, like it just
Yeah.
wouldn't be as special. So
Exactly. And I feel like you don't feel the highs near as much if you don't feel like the lows at all.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
and like it
I
just,
love that. Yeah. That's so
and
true.
I feel like not even competitors, I feel like that applies for literally like everything in life, like lifestyle clients as well. Like,
Yeah.
you lose the novelty and like the enjoyment of things, obviously, if you're always consistently like doing them and whatnot. So I feel like, yeah, it is. It becomes so special.
Yeah, I think even for me personally, obviously I've only done my first season. I really underestimated how much of a long-term thing this is. Because
Yeah.
I was always like, I'll only ever promise one show at a time. Did my first season and I was like, I can't imagine not living exactly like this for the next like 2 years.
I know. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, oh my God, what's my life purpose now that the stage isn't waiting? And it's, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you sort of have to really enjoy this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like you have to like the gym to be a bodybuilder, which sounds
Oh,
like
you couldn't not like the gym.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would sort of tell first-time competitors? So like top tips or things that you wish you knew before competing or before sort of starting your competitive journey?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a few points. First and foremost, like you just cannot control the outcome. So that's why you have to be so journey focused and just be focused on your own progression, your own lane. Because you could look the best on stage, but it's just not what the judges want on the day. Like, for example, if you've got 5 girls that are more full, less conditioned, and you're really conditioned, they're going to pick the fuller girls, and then vice versa as well. So it's one of those things you just can't control. It depends like who shows up on the day, the judging panel, and all those things. Also, as well, mentioned this before, but it's never too early to practice your posing. But yeah, pretty much all of these points is kind of coming from the lessons, like your off season. That's literally like your prep before your prep. But yeah, like you really just have to enjoy it as a lifestyle and do all the things you do in prep in your off season. Like it's it's all those 1% habits that just add up over time. So
Yeah, I feel like viewing your off season as like an improvement time, and like that is where you make the change, and it's either you make it here or like you get on stage and you look exactly the same. And in order to make that change, like the same habits have to sort of carry across from like exactly what you do in prep carries across into like that improvement off season. Something that I noticed too transitioning out of my off season like into my prep was how like everything was literally the exact same. And I said to so many people, like they'd ask me, oh, how's prep? And I'm like, it's so boring. Like it's just life. Like everything's literally the exact same. Like I get up, I do my cardio, I do steps, like I eat the same meals. Like the only difference is like I might not go out for like dinner with my family on like a Saturday night. Like aside from that, it's pretty much the exact same. And I feel like if you do get into prep and all of a sudden it's like your whole life has changed, then the pre-prep probably wasn't like as established as it should be. Going backwards a little bit too, when you mentioned like standing on stage against everybody, I feel like too that's sort of intertwines with like not comparing your prep against others on Instagram. And I don't know if this is like something that you have done, but I know in my first prep, I always found myself like looking at people that I knew I would be competing against, and then okay, realizing that either one, they don't look anything like they do on Instagram, or two, like they pulled out, or three, there were girls I didn't see on Instagram that like looked amazing. So like you just don't know like who's going to show up or like what they're actually going to show up looking like. And I feel like it just takes so much peace out of your prep, thinking and like viewing other people. So
honestly, like self-comparison literally is the thief of joy. Like I know it's like such a, like it's a common quote that everyone says, but it is so true. Like my first prep, I was always on Instagram and I'd send screenshots to my coach like, oh my god, this girl looks better than me, and it's like I was constantly making myself anxious rather than focusing on my own prep. I was focusing on others and just stealing my own joy out of the day. So my second prep, I honestly muted anyone I felt threatened by. I just focused on producing rather than consuming. Like social media can be your best friend or your worst enemy, depending on how you go about it. So yeah, and you know, it just comes down to your mindset at the end of the day. Like you really got to discipline your mind to like think, like just approach things differently.
Yeah. I find it really helpful too. I can't remember where I heard this, but someone once said, I think it might have been on like another podcast somewhere else, but like it's a criteria game. It isn't like a best physique. So you may see somebody on Instagram who looks like insane and you think like, fuck, like she's shredded, like striated, everything like that. But it doesn't necessarily align with the criteria. And like even if the judges are looking on stage and there's someone who's like in like nuts condition, it does not mean that they are going to say win or place or whatnot. Or if like they're unbalanced or whatnot, but like on social media they have these like massive like wellness size glutes and everything. So I find that extremely helpful, reminding myself that like, yes, I can acknowledge that they look great, but I'm not going to let that dishearten me because like, I'm not going to fixate about how good they look because at the end of the day, like it's a criteria game.
Exactly. It's a subjective sport.
Yeah. Did you do any comparison in your prep?
I did. The thing I thought was like super helpful for avoiding that is like sort of befriending them.
Like, oh, so what do you do today in your prep?
Obviously on Instagram, like we all follow the other competitors, like we all talk to each other or whatever. But yeah, actually going out of your way when you're feeling jealous, like befriend them. They're another person. They're probably feeling as nervous and anxious and like outside of the criteria as you are. Because you can see it clearly. But actually just like befriending them, they're probably a perfectly nice person. It actually helps so much, and you'll see them on the show day, and then it's like actually have a nice sense of community when you're there.
Well, that's the thing as well. Like it takes off the nerves. Like I was friends with so many girls backstage at nationals, and it just made the experience so much enjoyable rather than everyone just sitting in their own corners keeping to themselves. It's just a good vibe. Like everyone just enjoys themselves. But I think that's a great point what you're saying with befriending them. And that's the same as like in life in general. Like you could have this perceived view on someone because, you know, you think that they're prettier or they've got a better career or whatever it might be. But they could be thinking the same thing about you at the end of the day. So yeah, it's like you kind of reframe your mindset on that person.
Yeah, I feel like with that too, if you're able to build relationships with everybody, when they do succeed, like you're going to be happy and you realize like it doesn't take anything away from you, them succeed. Like
it doesn't take away your joy.
Like it fills your cup up as opposed to like obviously you're probably going to be disappointed, but you don't think like fuck. Like you can celebrate it as well. It isn't necessarily just like shit, like I didn't place. Like like I may not have placed, but like she placed. I'm so happy for her, and like obviously she's clearly deserving of it, and whatnot.
And it helps you sort of look at it a lot more clearly and sort of think like, okay, she won and that's awesome. What can I do to sort of be in that position next time?
Yeah.
As opposed
Yeah.
to sort of like coming from that jealousy standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I hate, this is my biggest pet peeve ever, is like hearing people say, oh, like I should have won. I should have won.
Yes.
Yeah.
I looked better than her, like whatever.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like I've got to trust the judges on this one. Like that's what
Yeah.
and especially at like bigger competitions as well, where say like judges are extremely consistent, or like there's an international judge like on the panel or whatnot. And there's some Chris Bumstead quote about it. He says it in like some reel or whatnot. I can't remember what it is, but it's something about that. I'm gonna find it and
I
show
don't think
you.
I've heard it.
It's so good, but he says something about like people saying that, oh, like I should have won. And he just pretty much says like, no, you shouldn't. Like you
Yeah.
obviously you need to be doing more. Like there's something else that needs to be
Yeah.
done. Like you didn't
Yeah,
win.
there's some kind of gap.
Yeah. And like there's a reason why you're not in that first place, and there's a reason why they are. And like that's okay, but like it doesn't necessarily mean that like you deserve that. Like you obviously don't. Which I think keeps your head screwed on a little bit. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
Because like if you're coming at it from like an absolute ego standpoint, you're not going to improve between like this season and next season thinking that you should have won.
Yeah, and like there's always going to be somebody who is working harder.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be somebody who is better. And like even if you place at one show, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to place at another show. Like there's always something. And I feel like that's so reflected as well, even in like the top. Like you look at say Laura Lee placing at like Arnold's, and then her placings at like the Olympia and whatnot.
Exactly, yeah.
Like you see that isn't necessarily the case. And but yeah, something else that's so interesting. Sorry, I know I'm rambling a bit about this.
Oh no, it's fine.
The difference in how bikini the criteria looks on each individual.
Yeah.
We're talking about this. And like you compare the girls at the Olympia, they all look different, but the criteria somehow fits them as well. And I feel like that's a good point in regards to comparison, because like they all fit the criteria, but they all look different some way. And I think that's important to remember, that like it isn't one specific like perfect outlined shape. Like it all looks slightly different on each individual. Like Issa looks so different to like Laura and everything like that. But I feel like that would help mentally too. I'm gonna use that myself.
Yeah, quickly write it down. Well, I mean, it's the same as anything in life. Like if you compare your personality to someone, if you compare like for example, if you can paint and this girl can sing, you'll probably be like, why can't I sing? But then she's like, why can't I paint? It's like could be the most random things, but you have to remember you're uniquely you, and you have to look at your own strengths rather than your weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty. Do you have what are your future competitive plans?
The plan was to compete international, go for the pro card this year. However, post-op obviously has changed that timeline slightly. So the plan stays the same, but it's just going to be a little bit further pushed into the future. So probably season A next year, because I want to travel this year as well. But yeah, honestly, like we were saying, it's off seasons, improvement season is just kind of your prep as well. So, same lifestyle in the meantime, just work to be better. And then, compete next year.
That's so exciting. Do you have any idea around international shows?
I reckon Europe. So Sweden, Spain, just places where they are a bit fuller and more dense. We did notice the Europeans, they are a bit bigger. And me personally, I feel like I am a little bit on the bigger end for bikini, especially my quads. Like they just have no chill. And I'm like, please stop growing. I don't want to go to wellness. I want to stay bikini. So overseas, I feel like they're just a lot more dense there, depending where you go. So
yeah, it's so thrilling talking about international travel and like competing at the same time.
Yeah.
Like again, I was talking to somebody yesterday about competing internationally, and she traveled to Japan for the Amateur Olympia for clients. And just like discussing that, I find so exciting. I think season A this year, oh my God, it's this year. we're going to like Korea for the Amateur Olympics, and then we have a client who's doing a show in Italy as well in Europe.
Oh,
So
wow.
I feel like it's like a whole other world, and like I watch people's like vlogs and everything like that. And even like when all the girls went to the Amateur Olympia last season in Japan, like it just feels different. Like
It's so exciting.
thrilling. Yeah, it's so exciting. And I feel like I was literally on Instagram just like flicking through their stories.
Yeah, just living through them.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because like show wise, obviously we just have like the state and the national show here. And like you don't see as many people branch out, obviously, because like financially it's such a big thing because like flights and everything because we are so far away. But yeah, I find it so thrilling looking at everybody's things.
Yeah, 100%. It's just a different experience, and like, you know, just so many competitors and stuff. Like, it's just insane, the level overseas.
Yeah. And with your next season, will you continue to compete until you get a pro card, or have you sort of like marked out competitions and like when the end of your season like will conclude?
Yeah, that was kind of the plan. Like my coach and my partner, they were willing to just keep going from show to show until I got my pro card last time I competed. But I didn't place in the opens, so I made the decision. I was like, look, I didn't place in opens. I clearly have a lot to improve on. I don't want to look average. I would rather look like a pro. So that's why I took that time off. But yeah, that's kind of the plan. Like, just keep competing until I get it. But obviously, that also depends on health and finances as well. So if obviously I've done like 10 shows, then I'll probably be like, okay, might need to chill.
Yeah, only up
Yeah, maybe 10, maybe 5, who knows? But yeah, so yeah, we'll just see how it goes really. Hopefully sooner, but
yeah. I feel like that's another benefit for competing in places like Europe is there is no like seasons. It's just competition.
yeah, it's just whenever.
Yeah, every weekend. And I remember I think my partner like talking to one of the coaches like in the UK, and he was like, oh yeah, we had like season A, and the coach was like, what's season A? Like, because they don't have like season A, season B, it's just like the comps all year round.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. We wait X amount of months for a season, and they're like, "Oh, it's just next weekend, whatever."
Yeah,
There's like this massive build up here towards like April and October every single year.
Yeah, I know. And you know, like when somebody says, oh yeah, I'm competing in this competition, you know, like already a rough timeline of like when they started prep and what it looks like. Whereas like over there, it's just like, oh, I'm in prep, and you have like no idea really when they're competing or like what shows they're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like we're slowly gravitating towards that a little bit more, maybe because the inclusion now of like the season C. And even in some of the natty feds, they've pulled like a couple of the competitions away from like the end of season A, and they're a little bit like more into the middle of the year. I don't know whether or not that's just like general demand. But hopefully it gets to a point whereby it's not just like set seasons, like there's
for sure. Yeah, well, I mean the show the stage was getting so crowded, like it was just getting to a point where you're like bumping into competitors, and it's like, okay, surely we can like split this up a little bit.
Yeah. I remember watching like the last seasons. We were up in Queensland for a client's show, and like the bikini girls, like it was like 6 or 7 p.m. and there was just so many of them, and I thought like I don't know what is going to happen like in the future if it continues to expand, like whether or not they'll do like guys on one day, like girls show on another day or whatnot. But I guess it's exciting seeing that everything's also expanding as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It will be interesting to see how the new like season B goes in regards to like numbers and lineups and sort of what it looks like. So I feel like
well, I heard it's not a pro qualifying season. So, but it's weird because then you can qualify for season C, but then you'd have to do like 2 preps. So Yeah, so I don't know. It might be a bit quieter simply because it's not a pro qualifier, but I think it would be a good stepping stone for like first timers and
Yeah,
people who are just looking to see what it's like rather than go for their pro card.
yeah, it would even be, I feel like, super helpful if you were somebody who was doing like the Natural Federation season A, and then
Mm,
like you got to the end of your prep and you're like, oh, like I wonder what like an IFBB show would feel like, and then you could sort of like cruise into
mm,
like that show where there's less pressure, but you still get like that level of like professionalism, like the stage, the experience and whatnot. Um,
yeah, for sure.
it will be really interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move into some more like coaching and like business related questions.
Yeah.
Um, how did you sort of start your like coaching, personal training, and everything? What were you doing for work prior?
I was working in a supplement store, but like I've had many different jobs because I've always just been so unsure what my passion was. So it's like done hairdressing, retail, I've done electrical work, so I've done
Yeah,
the whole lot. Yeah, just so random. But yes, I was working in a supplement store, just casually. But yeah, it was just after my first prep, I was like just so drawn to bodybuilding, and I was really inspired by my own coach, what he did. So it just really made me want to do the same. So I started that online. Um, and then yeah, I was just doing that on the side along with the supplement store position. And yeah, and then it was after my first prep, then I started full-time coaching. So I left the supplement store, and then yeah, and then I just kind of wanted to do it in person as well. So I started PTing, started teaching posing as well, which is really fun. I still haven't gotten back into PTing just yet because I'm still recovering. Can't lift anything over my shoulders just yet. But yeah, so I'm like full time in like the bodybuilding and lifestyle coaching career now.
Do you feel like now you've sort of settled into a career that aligns a lot more passion wise?
100%. Like it doesn't really feel like work, especially if it's like, posing or anything like that. Obviously, you're going to have your days where you're like, oh, can't be bothered doing this or whatever.
Yeah.
But, it's when it's actually your passion, it doesn't really feel like you're going to an office every day and you're just dreading it. So,
Yeah. I remember driving to like work thinking, oh my God, like why the fuck am I
yeah, it'll be like Monday, you're like, can't wait for Friday.
Yeah. And now like I have just Sundays off, and sometimes I sit around on a Sunday and I'm like, oh, like maybe I should like go and like do something in the office or
Yeah. Like, oh, maybe I'll just check on my clients, see how
yeah,
they're going.
actually. And I feel like because it is so like genuinely life changing, and you get like client messages quite frequently, like them updating you with like big changes or
Yeah.
things in their life. It is just so like incentivizing from that perspective, because
Yeah.
like you it's not like most jobs whereby yes, like you might be helping somebody like find a pair of shoes or whatnot, like you're genuinely transforming somebody's
Mm.
life, like
Yeah.
and even like we've had clients here, even like with the guy coaches that we have here, and some clients who have just lost like 70 kilos and whatnot, and their whole entire lives have just changed, which
Yeah.
I think is so gratifying. And like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll do updates, like people's updates, and like it doesn't feel like work. It's like I'm genuinely like I can feel my heart pumping, and I'm like so to do it.
Bashing the keyboard with passion. Yeah, it's very rewarding.
Yeah, and I feel like there's nothing worse than being stuck in a job that you don't enjoy, and
Mm.
you deep down you know that it doesn't align with like what you feel like you want to do, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it just makes a day's drag. And, you can't be truly happy if you're constantly going to an environment that doesn't align with you. It could be that very slight energy imbalance, but it still makes a huge difference to how you feel on the inside.
I remember Michael actually told me once, who's my partner, who said like if somebody offered you every year, like or it was like 70 or like 60 years of your life in exchange for like $80,000 a year, like would you say yes to that, like in exchange for like a job say you didn't enjoy? And I feel like most people would decline that.
Yeah.
Mm. And that's the crazy thing, is you're technically doing that when you work at a job you don't enjoy.
Yeah, because like you are literally exchanging like your time, which is the most like precious and valuable asset you have,
Yeah.
for something that like is not providing any purpose whatsoever other than like putting food on the table. So like you may as well take a risk and try and branch out and sort of find something that does align a little bit more with like your passions and everything.
Yeah, 100%. Like you spend more time at work than you do with your friends and your family.
Yeah, literally. It is so.
Mm.
All right, what do you consider the most important characteristics in order to be a great client?
I would say definitely be open to constructive criticism and change. Because you're going to have your weeks where you might be a little bit off your game, and your coach is going to be like, yo, like you shouldn't have eaten that or whatever. Or even, when it comes to competing as well, you got to be open to the criticism of, oh, your posing was off, or oh, you need more conditioning, whatever it is. So you really have to be open to change and criticism, because otherwise it'll just eat you alive at the end of the day. But you also need to be really honest with your coach, like, because you could keep things from them, and then that's so much data that they need to know for like moving into the next week. Like you could have had a sugary Pepsi, and that could make a difference to your carb intake for the day, like all those tiny little 1% things. But yeah, honestly, like commitment as well. If you're not committed, that's just not going to align with a coach, because you both want what's best for the client, and if you're not truly committed, you're not going to get those results just by sitting on your ass.
Yeah. I think sometimes people forget that like you hire a coach and yes, they're going to hold you accountable, but at the end of the day, like they want you to win. Like everything that they say, everything that they do is out of like experience with other people and recognizing that like this is what needs to be done. Like we want you to succeed. Like we're not just criticizing you because like we feel like it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
to change and create change. And I think as well, like reassuring people that like it's meant to feel uncomfortable, like it isn't meant to feel like your normal life. Like it's not meant to feel super easy and cruisy and whatnot. Like especially if you're somebody who has like spent years developing unhealthy habits, like it's undoubtedly going to be feel super uncomfortable to like unwind everything. I often tell people like if you don't feel challenged or you don't feel uncomfortable, then we probably aren't doing like enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't grow in your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like obviously that applies physically, but like mentally as well. Like sometimes you'll get messages about people having hard days and whatnot, or just like hard times, and then you sort of analyze what's happening, and you realize that like, yes, mentally this may feel really hard, but like you're learning and you're changing and like you're growing so much through this. And yeah.
At the end of the day, you choose your hard. Like you can choose to be uncomfortable with your body and remain the same, or you can choose the difficulty of getting up early, going to the gym, eating chicken and rice instead of a pie from a server, or whatever it is. Like at the end of the day, you're always making a choice, always.
Yeah, I love that one. I always forget about that, but I love that because it is so true. Because like mentally being in a position and physically like that you don't like is so challenging. I feel like years ago when I was in a place whereby like I really didn't like my habits or like what I was doing, like it was so much harder to stay like that than it was for me to implement some like strategies and habits to like move forward away from that. And yeah.
Definitely. It's like delayed gratification, always.
Literally. Alrighties. What are some lessons that coaching women has taught you?
Oh, I would say definitely like a lot of people are in it for the wrong reasons. Like you learn a lot about people's character, and people just want that instant gratification really, and they don't want it for the reward of the lifestyle and all those things. And just their why isn't strong enough to commit. I feel like a lot of women do it out of self-hatred and poor self-worth, and that causes a very bad relationship with food and training and stuff, because they're trying to fix this thing that they hate rather than come at it in like a loving way. Like, you should train because you love your body, because you want to nourish your body with healthy foods and all those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, it's really taught me a lot about, like, in a way, this sounds sad, but like how broken people are, and that's kind of their why, which shouldn't be their why.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It is so true because like occasionally you'll get people who inquire and their like sole focus is something composition wise, and all they talk about is like how much they don't like this or how much they don't like that, and like I like want you to bring my food down really low because like I want to be skinnier and whatnot.
I want to weigh a certain amount.
Yeah, and it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with self-improvement. It is simply just like a band-aid that they think that like getting to a certain weight is going to make them feel better. And then they get to that weight and they've hated the entire process because they haven't like recognized like how good it makes you feel to do everything out of a place of like respecting yourself.
Yeah.
And then like it's just like an endless cycle of
Yeah.
like you cannot hate yourself to a good place, like ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's, if they don't love the journey as well, a lot of the time they spiral and they go backwards after because they hated that whole time, put the
Yeah.
weight back on, and then it's just a repeat.
Yeah. I feel like too, people also forget in regards to like habits that coaching is like the main purpose of coaching lifestyle people anyways is creating habits, and like at the start it's always going to be like it's always going to feel super uncomfortable, and then the closer you become to that becoming a habit, it's something that just happens so mindlessly. So I feel like until the habits are established, obviously things aren't going to be like as enjoyable. But I remember like the thought of getting on the treadmill and walking for like an hour to get steps like 4 years ago would have been like, get fucked. Like,
I'm the same
there's no
too.
way. I don't care what I'm watching. Like, there's no way that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And now the thought of doing that, I'm like, yeah, like it's my me time. Like I just get to relax and like
Yeah.
to really.
Well, I remember in my peak week. What's that?
I said I've always been the exact opposite, where I was like, yeah, I'll do the treadmill for whatever. Ask me to go outside for a walk. Never would have done it. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, I remember my peak week, like, yeah, a few years ago, never would have looked forward to going for walks or going on the treadmill. And then it came up to my mock peak week, and my coach was like, Kristen, you're not allowed to go over your steps this time. And I was like, oh my God, I can't go for steps. Oh, and it was just like the end of the world for me because I just like enjoyed that lifestyle so much.
Literally, and I like mentally, steps especially, I feel like, and training, literally everything. I feel like the more you do it, the more you realize how good internally it makes you feel. Like
Yeah.
I associate walking now with like my me time. Like it's my relaxation time. Like it's my time whereby like I'll go for digestion walks and like
Yes, digestion walk.
even like training, like I rarely even view training as like something like I have to do. It's more so training is the easiest way for me to improve my self-esteem and self-belief. Like I think I can't do an extra rep, an extra weight. I show myself every single session that I can. And I think people underestimate the mental change that comes from good nutrition and like consistent training and good habits. Like it's not just the physical, like it's so much about the mental. And then once you get the consistency, it's like, fuck, like I love training now. Like I love going for walks because they make me feel good mentally. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that sort of changed me from like where I was quite a few years ago to like not wanting to be consistent with everything to doing it, forcing myself to do it, and then realizing that like I find so much peace in taking care of myself and knowing that I'm taking responsibility for whether or not I feel good. So yeah.
100%. Like, even just changing the way you go about it, like, rather than saying I have to go to gym, you say I get to go. And like, you know, especially recovering from surgery, I'm like, oh my God, I get to go to gym today. And it's like, just that one word can make a huge difference on your outlook. But also as well, like when you are eating better, you got to remember like your gut is your second brain. So if you're filling it with shit food all the time, of course you're going to feel shit. So it's like if you start filling yourself with whole foods, good foods, you're going to eventually feel good on the inside internally, and you're going to have more energy and all those things.
And then you gravitate to like opting for better choices. And like I love the brain analogy, and like thinking about like your brain being in your stomach, and like everything that you're putting in is simply just feeding your brain. And like I know nothing mentally makes me feel shitter than like bad digestion. Like
oh yeah, don't get me started.
like everything, it makes you feel like shit. And I think people really underestimate like food quality and the impact it has on your mental health as well. But it does take like some discipline to get consistent with that, to feel that difference, to then want to continue like moving forward and like making those choices and everything. But yeah,
I think a really big thing with that is sort of remembering you're making those choices for you. You're not you're not doing it for your coach. You're not, you know, doing it so that, you know, this guy will like you or whatever. Because at the end of the day, there's no real accountability in that if you're doing it for someone else. When you come from that point of wanting to feel better, you know, you're wanting this for yourself, you're wanting to feel that gratification and respect that comes from doing it for yourself. That's sort of when you're able to have that consistency and really make it a long-term lifestyle type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like you look at it as a form of self-love rather than a form of self-hatred.
And I always associate, I know I mentioned this before, but like I always tell clients that nothing feels better knowing that regardless of what is going on in your life, if you're like eating your food consistently and like you're following your nutrition, you're maintaining your training, you're getting your steps, and like you're getting good sleep, like there's so much peace in that. And you know that like no matter what is happening, like you can rely on yourself to take care of yourself properly, and you don't make the situation worse by like neglecting all of those things. And like just associating taking care of yourself with peacefulness, and like making yourself feel at peace, and knowing that like no matter what happens, like I know I can rely on myself to take care of myself, to stick to everything and whatnot, which I find extremely, extremely helpful as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like since my surgery, I've had a bit going on in my personal life as well. And, you know, I could have easily been like, oh, fuck this. I'm just going to sabotage my diet. Like, I'm not training anyway. Like, I could have easily just eaten the food that was in my mum's cupboard. But even though I was going through so much at the time, I went to bed feeling so good about myself. The fact that I still stuck to my calories and my macros, no matter what was going on. And it's like, that was just a huge form of self-love. And at the time people were like, oh, like I'm going through a breakup, or I just got, I don't know, fired or whatever. It's like it's very easy to opt for those bad choices, but you want to go to bed proud. And if you can make it through that and respect yourself, like that is something to be so freaking proud of.
It's like the car tire analogy, where like if one
I love this one
blows out, why would you go and pop all the other ones?
Exactly. And that's exactly what self-sabotage is.
Have you noticed an evolution in your coaching methods over the years with like experience, or like specific clients, like how you approach situations and whatnot?
I feel like not too much has changed. I do kind of approach style methods differently now, where, because you know, you first kind of start out and you're like 3 times 15 hip thrusts and you know 2 times 20 lateral raises or whatever. Whereas now I like to do a lot of different intensifiers, so like fam sets, myo sets, drop sets, you know, working in back off sets, because I feel like it just really encourages people to push themselves more. Because if you're placing more stress on your on your muscle, but like from less volume standpoint, you're going to recover better, you're going to finish your session feeling more fulfilled, and you're going to want to push yourself more. So like I try and look at it in a way that's going to be more supportive towards mental health. But also as well, I like to include little mental health things within my coaching. Like one of their daily like steps will be to do some positive affirmations, and they'll send them through to me, and that has helped some of my clients so much. And it's so rewarding when they message me at the end of the day like, oh my god, like I had the best day, like I told myself I'm beautiful and I felt beautiful, and it's just like, oh my god, like, and it's so amazing, like it's just so rewarding.
Something I've noticed too with my clients is like when I first started coaching, I was like, yep, here's your training, nutrition, supplementation timeline and whatnot. And recently, however, like I've put a lot more investment in obviously all of it, but also like stress management and like self-care and like what needs of yours aren't being met, how can these be met, so that it's not just like all hyper focused on like training and nutrition and like all of that side. Like there is the mental health element in there as well. There's like the self-care element, where like it is just a whole process whereby we focus on literally like improving everything. Like it's not just your composition, it's improving how you view everything, it's improving like your perception of yourself, others, as well as like responsibility and accountability. The best thing people will realize, especially with, I feel like lifestyle clients, is anything that happens, like doesn't matter whether or not it's good or it's bad, like it's still your responsibility to sort of deal with it and work through it, regardless of whether or not like you were the causation, like you still have to take responsibility for it as well. So I feel like intertwining that with like the self-care and everything like that just builds resilient minds too.
100%. Yeah.
And I feel like that has been one of the biggest things I've noticed ever since I've started coaching, even like from like personal training, like in person, is like female resilience and how low this can be for some people, and how increasing this, like everything improves. And like even just like training resilience, like pushing like to a point whereby like you seek out the uncomfortable reps. And all those little things are just improving resilience, and then they just feel so much better. But I feel like the more you coach anyways, like the more you're around people who coach, the more you slowly like just like refine everything, and obviously like you expand your knowledge and whatnot, and it all just becomes like more fluent and
it just becomes second nature, and you just kind of, and as well like you learn more about different personalities, because that's the thing, like you have to remember everyone was raised differently, everyone has different perceptions on everything, so you really have to learn how to communicate and like how to go about the best way with all different people. Like one person could respond really well to tough love, and then one person needs that soft kindness type of approach, so you really got to be wary of those things too. And even girls who have got like past eating disorders and stuff like that, you have to be very careful how you approach your methods and stuff too.
Yeah, I really like that. Because I know sometimes coaches can present themselves as like they coach in one specific way, like they're like a super hard ass, like you're a no bullshit coach, but like that only applies to so many people. And like if you approach everybody like that, like you're not going to get very far with people, because everyone is so individual, like their individual experience and whatnot. And yeah, like some people like you can be a hard ass on, but like other people's like they do require a soft approach. And they do require like more accountability. They require like you to reach out to communicate with them, because they may be slightly reluctant to like reach out to you as much and whatnot.
100%.
So yeah, it is so individual. I feel like that's one of the biggest things I've learned through coaching, is like I knew it was going to be extremely individual anyways, but like it is so personalized.
100%. Yeah, like one person, for example, like I'll have like two different clients. So this one loves the grind, and she'll be like, oh, like can you increase my steps to 15k, like I feel like I'm not doing enough, and she'll be like grind. But then this girl, she might have 8k and she'll be like, look, I feel really under pressure, like I feel like it's really obsessive. So then instead of setting her goal as 8K, I set it as daily mental health walk. So then she kind of like viewed it differently and saw it as like, again, an act of self-love rather than like a chore.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
We have to tell
Yeah.
people to go on daily mental health walks.
Yeah. Because that's what I view it as too. Like if I'm walking outside, it's like for my mental health. But then if it's on the treadmill, it's for me to like edit reels and stuff, like just edit my captions.
You know what? I feel like I have a very good relationship with the treadmill. I think it's because there's one specific treadmill at the gym that like I have like a connection to. Like, like do you know, anyone else feel
Yeah.
like
It's
there's
like everyone's got like their favorite seat, their
Yeah.
favorite. Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got
I
my
get you.
favorite treadmill. It's right at the back, it's in the corner, and I think it's because I've been on it so many times. And like in my last prep, I'd be on there for so long. Lights upstairs, like the sensor lights would turn off, like whilst I was still like walking
Oh my God, that's so funny.
up there, just like strolling on the treadmill, like in the dark, like watching a movie, and I'm like, oh, this is so peaceful.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of like the nostalgia around something. So that's kind of, yeah, what it be.
I do have to admit, but when the weather's nice and like even on a weekend, like meeting up with a friend and like going on a beach walk, like I hadn't done that in so long, and I met up with a friend not long ago, and it was like the best thing that had happened to me in like 3 months. Like
Oh, bless.
so weird. But I think
Honestly, they're the best.
yeah, and it was like it was like such a big need of mine in regards to like personal connection that like had been neglected for so long. And then when I went on the walk, I was like, yep, like I've tons of sun exposure. Like we walked, we got like 12,000 steps, and like it was with a friend and we caught up, and it was like the best experience of my life.
Yeah, it's honestly so good. And I love like how much bigger this community is getting because instead of opting for partying or having a shitty meal, it's like walkies is like this exciting thing for like gym girls, and you like get a coffee and that's like your reward. And it's just like, it's such a vibe, especially if it's somewhere like a beach or something like that.
And she even reached out to me the other day and she was like, hey, we should go and do pottery together. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's such a good idea. Like, I'm so glad that people are gravitating towards like more like connection based exercises and stuff like that, as opposed to like going out like drinking or like, hey, let's meet at like this bar at like this time, like every single weekend and whatnot, and get like sloshed off our faces. But instead it is more like surrounding yourself with people who appreciate like those more wholesome sort of moments, and it's like, what can we do together that is going to genuinely make us feel good as well and make the experience like super
Well, that kind of like reflects what your friendship's like as well. Like if you're constantly having to be intoxicated, it's like, do you really value that friendship, or is it just kind of like convenience? You just want to go out? Because when you're drinking, it's like, you know, you might not even remember the night. Whereas like you said, it's more those wholesome moments. Like even if it's like your best friend comes over and you like watch Shrek or something, it's like that's kind of like those wholesome special moments, or like baking something in your house or whatever. Like it's almost like we're getting in touch with that inner child type of thing again, which is so important for like healing and progressing in life too.
No, I 100% agree. And I feel like building connections within the industry as well is good because people understand like the limitations around, say, like eating out, or like, oh, like I might not be able to go out tonight, like I was super busy at work, like I've got to train at the gym, and they understand that.
Yeah.
And they understand that like they're still important, but like ticking all of your boxes is also important. And I know that like when I started like coaching and like because I live quite a long way away from like a lot of my old friends, like an hour, 2 hours away. It was hard, like gravitating sort of out of school and whatnot, and like establishing boundaries within friendships that like I don't have time to sit in the car for like 2 hours, like if I'm training and whatnot. So I feel like being friends with people who are in the industry and understand like all of this sort of like the lifestyle, especially the bodybuilding side of everything, when like you can't go out to eat and do stuff, is super, super important. Not to mention like if you're surrounded by like 5 or 6 other people who are doing the same thing and like doing positive things, like you're just going to become like that. Like,
Yeah, you are who you surround yourself with.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like if you're hanging around with like 5 shit people, like you're just going to become the 6th. So I think it is so important to make connections like within the industry, with like-minded people as well. And people that you like aspire to be like as well, like people who do push for more, and want more from things and want more from life too. So like you're in a friendship group or you have friends that are like ambitious and whatnot, I think has been like one of the biggest things for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you are who you hang out with at the end of the day. And you should never want to be the best in the room either. Like, you should always hang around people that do push you to be better. Like, you know, and it doesn't mean like because they're successful that you can't be either. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was so
no, thank you for having me.
Well, we wish you luck on all your competitive endeavors.
We'll be watching from Instagram and YouTube.
Don't you worry, we'll be watching all right.
No, thank you so much for having me. That was nice to meet you guys.